Screen addiction is a group of behaviors that are negative, some negative outcomes that can happen when we use too much technology during our day. So prolonged use of watching TV, video games, scrolling through social media, all of that use acts kind of like a digital drug for our brain. It releases the dopamine in our brain, and that can negatively impact our impulse control. And there's been studies that show that it actually affects the frontal cortex in much the same way as cocaine can affect our brain. So there's just a pleasure reward cycle that is going to end up causing some negative outcomes for our day-to-day life. Starting at ages 0 to 6 months, we really recommend no screen time if at all possible. Between 6 months and 2 years, we recommend only some video chatting, so that way it's an interactive social thing with grandparents or other loved ones. There's really not optimal educational sites and use for internet before the age of 2. We also really encourage interactive play during those years and not just plopping kids down in front of TVs. Then between the ages of 2 and 5, we recommend 1 hour, if possible, to condense it into 1 hour of quality screen time of any kind that should be viewed and interacted with the adult, so that kids are getting more out of that, and they're still learning interaction and social verbal cues. They're going to learn more language in general, and basically, it's a much better way for their brain to develop at that age. Between the ages of 2 to 5, we also recommend 1 to 2 hours of physical play every day. So that's also a big part of learning, and that's usually done with other children and parents and interaction. For the ages of school age kids, there's not really a set time limit that's recommended for screen use, since we use it all day long at school. There's probably in almost every class now. There's digital textbooks. So a lot of it comes down to limiting the social media use, gaming, and just regular video shows for entertainment. So we want to limit the, set some time limits with parents and kids and come to an agreement on some of those. We want to still encourage an hour a day at least of physical activity. So that could be part of, if they're in a sport already, that's fine, that's great. We want them to be outside playing. We want them to play face-to-face with kids. And then also, doing entertainment things that don't include screens. So old-fashioned reading books, playing actual games, and using toys, and learning life skills. So cooking with parents, learning crafts, and other safety and life skills. If our children are relying on screens for their entertainment, that could be a warning sign that they're addicted to screens. If they're choosing screens over books, every time, or overusing all their games and other toys that they used to play with. If there's a struggle over stopping screen use, that's usually a warning sign that they're fairly addicted to it and their brains are really craving it. If they're having more aggressive behavior, that could be a sign that there's too much or somewhat inappropriate screen usage for their age group. There should be really no violent viewing for ages 6 and under, because they can't distinguish between reality and what's virtual. So even older children can have increased stress and aggression if they're seeing too much violence. So those are some of the symptoms. So we could monitor our actual screen usage. Our phones will give us a weekly update and tell you how much more or less screen time you've used for the week. There's, we recommend that you don't have TV on in the background. So we don't want that kind of playing 24 hours a day behind all of our activities. That's, basically, if I do that, my kids are staring off between questions of their homework. So, so trying to model, turning that off. I'm a parent, and so I'm certainly not always the best model for screen use, especially since I have a workstation right in the kitchen, and so I'm staring at my computer for hours on end. I do try to take breaks, so there is a 20-20-20 rule where for every 20 minutes that you're spending staring at a screen, you should take about a 20-second visual rest. So look at something that's 20 feet away for about 20 seconds. So give yourself a brain rest, and maybe let your kids do the same thing as they're working at the kitchen table, doing the same thing behind you. Long-term ramifications, starting at a very young age, it could be as early as causing speech delay and some cognitive impairment. If we're using screen way too many hours a day from toddler age on up through school age, we're going to have possibly less problem-solving skills, creative thinking, basic schoolwork, grades might suffer. There's going to be ramifications physically. So the more screen use we have, we're shown to have more body weight and poorer bone health because we're not using our muscles. We could have more risk factors in the long run of our life for heart disease and other health conditions. There's more depression can happen if we're addicted to our screens all the time, especially depending on the content that we're always viewing. So depression, there could be anxiety, and there's always room for other predators on the internet. So there's cyberbullying and other safety issues that can cause some long-term psychological and otherwise effects. Parents can decide what sounds appropriate for their children, for their amount and quality types of viewing and games for their children. They can set limits with their kids, so there's a discussion of why this is important, what's it going to do in the long run for your health and well-being and our social interactions as a family. We can certainly, model good behavior, not texting the person in the room next to us, get up and do a face-to-face encounter with them. We can certainly play the video games with our kids so we know what's actually in the content of them, because not all of the ratings, equate to what we think our kids should really be viewing. There's other parental controls that can be set on different devices, but basically, interacting with your kids is going to make them more likely to talk to you, to tell you what they've learned from the internet or from their games.